Hey there, and welcome back to Legend of the GLORIO Heroes. You're listening to episode 33 of the premier hot takes and reaction and recap podcast for the legendary 1988 science fiction OVA. Here at Legend of the GLORIO Heroes, we're all friends.
Mm-hmm.
The best of friends.
Best friends.
You know, nothing will ever become between us.
They call us the twin stars of the GLORIO blog.
Yes. You are listening to the dulcet tones of the twin stars of the GLORIO blog. I am. God. Remind me that we should try to introduce ourselves that way the next GLORIO Chat podcast. As always, I am your good, reliable friend and host, G. And with me, my friendly co-host who will never betray me in my darkest hour, Iro.
I'm still here. Definitely won't betray you.
Yes. We are, I think that this week we are talking about a very friendly trio of episodes here. Just everybody getting along. Nobody is popping off for the pettiest of reasons. Nobody is being a big dumb fucking idiot getting mad at the way somebody phrased their text messages.
Yeah,
these three episodes are a lot, folks.
Yeah, episodes 93 for Pride, episode 94 Rebellion is a Hero's Privilege, and episode 95 The Twin Stars Collide.
Yes. In case our tone did not tip you off, this set of episodes is if last week was kind of setting up, all right, what is going to be the primary central conflict of season 4? I think these 3 episodes are kind of this season's basically. It's setting up the players, right? It's both sides kind of putting their pieces on the board, and we are about to see them clash in some very interesting and likely tragic ways in the near future. But so episode 90, excuse me, episode 93 opens up with Reuenthal getting the news of the prior episode of the assassination attempt, of Lutz's death, and Reinhardt's absence from the galaxy. We have Reuenthal kind of initially taking this relatively rationally, I'd say, right? Like initially he's like, initially it's like pretty competent Reuenthal, right?
He's like, if I can meet the Kaiser in person, we can talk this out and it'll be okay.
Right. So let's go find him. Let's escort him back here. We are informed that Grillpalzer from the Empire, or is Grillpalzer with Reuenthal at the
Bergengren's here at the moment.
Bergengren's here, my bad. Yes, they mentioned offhand that Grillpalzer is sent from the Empire from Fazan
to go check out Urvasi.
Yes, and I actually did get it mixed up here in my notes. So initially, Reuenthal gets the news of Reinhardt was almost assassinated. He's gone missing, but then later he gets a second missive that tells him
Lutz died in protecting the Kaiser.
And now here is where Reuenthal starts to pop off.
Here's where he's like, oh, if Lutz died, that means the situation is a lot more intense than I thought, and I can no longer just apologize.
Right. Reuenthal realizes that the situation has already taken a dramatic turn for the worse, because knowing the kind of guy Reinhardt is...
Sean Reuenthal's turf.
Oh, yes, it happens on Reuenthal, in Reuenthal's territory. The thing I was going to say is, the thing Reuenthal realizes that, because of the kind of man Reinhardt is, Reinhardt almost gets assassinated, but overall nobody gets hurt other than a couple dozen, soldiers. That's a Reinhardt you can, go up to and be like, hey, I'm real sorry this happened. A Reinhardt who loses one of his best admirals is a Reinhardt that's a lot more difficult to apologize to.
Yes.
And Reuenthal realizes that if he wanted to make up with Reinhardt, he'd have to bow and scrape a lot closer to the floor to be forgiven. And Reuenthal's kind of done with this shit. Reuenthal basically goes on a rant about how he shouldn't have to be the one who has to apologize. Like, he should not have to be the
Right.
one who has to debase his own honor and pride to earn Reinhardt's mercy. That he hasn't done anything wrong. And to be fair to Reuenthal, by bare technicality, he hasn't done anything wrong yet. But he starts saying a lot of wrong things from here.
He doesn't mind apologizing to the Kaiser, but he doesn't mind being a traitor, but he refuses to be set up as a traitor.
Yes, Reuenthal is being his most Reuenthal ass out here, just like shouting about how it's not fair. Essentially, he's complaining that it's not fair that he's being accused of treason when he hasn't committed treason yet.
I've already been accused of treason once. How dare I be accused of treason a second time?
Yes. And Bergengrun, bless Bergengrun, who is, turning out to be like, maybe the Yang with the clipboard of Reuenthal's camp, is like pleading with Reuenthal to still try and talk his way out of this. That, like, we'll go to Reinhardt, we'll present our evidence, we'll denounce, like, Lang and Oberstein, and, like, it's all gonna work out. Like, you just got to explain yourself, and, like, Lutz dying is a tragedy, but don't worry, like, Reinhardt will hear you out. And Reuenthal, like, pops off again, because he's like, apologize, like bow to the Kaiser when that human disguised as vermin named Heydrich Lang is still, like, in the Kaiser's good graces. Like, I refuse.
Why should I have to apologize?
And oh my god, just Reuenthal is being such a fucking drama queen. He calls in Job Truniht, basically.
Well, doesn't. It's got this whole, like, even, like, he says I'm going to call him Job Truniht, and then we get this extremely lengthy flashback / dream sequence.
Yes, it's so much.
Extremely lengthy.
Yes, it's extremely Reuenthal too. Like, for those of you who have not watched that episode back in season 1 in a while of Reuenthal's ridiculous backstory, this scene basically serves as a reminder that Reuenthal's childhood was ridiculous in every possible way, and that Reuenthal, like, there's a scene where Reuenthal is like reminiscing about the times he's, like, talked with Mittermeyer, and about the time that, like, Reuenthal maybe might have accidentally insulted Mittermeyer's wife, and that Reuenthal didn't realize till later, but Reuenthal's too prideful to apologize, so he just gives a bouquet of flowers to Mittermeyer's wife.
Reuenthal is, like, envious that Mittermeyer has a happy family, because he's never been a part of a happy family ever.
Yes, and then Reuenthal, like, mused that maybe could he possibly one day have a happy life. And while he is saying that piece of dialogue, a naked Elfried runs across the screen. It's just, oh my god, this is what I was talking about last week. The Empire just runs on completely different rules than the rest of the galaxy, and it's so much. It's so much. And like, there's another part of this dream sequence where he's like where he's like, oh, like, and if I were to apologize, and all these people would look down on me, like Reinhardt and Kirky Eyes and Lutz and the other admirals
and these women in dresses,
and these random women. And then, most importantly, Mittermeyer.
No.
And oh my god, it's so much. It's so much. And
and he's always, like, felt shocked that even though Reinhardt was so much younger than him, that Reinhardt had the ambition to tear down the aristocracy.
And so with all of this, like, essentially Reuenthal, like, through this dream sequence, arrives at the conviction that you know what, fine. If they accuse me of being a traitor, If they need their,
I'll just be a fucking
I'll
traitor.
play the role for them. I will be the monster they are all convinced I am. And if in the process I can also put a bullet in Lang and Oberstein, then all the better. Like, fuck it, I'll do it. Like, I was always thinking about doing it.
I'm gonna do it now.
I'll do it now because I'm done
I
apologizing.
even have the Kaiser's permission. He told me so in season 1.
Yes, and it's ridiculous. Like the fucking mental loopholes like that Reinhard jumps through. I mean, not Reinhard. Reuenthal jumps through to arrive at the conclusion that yes, treason is the only way out of this tragic misunderstanding.
It would be discourteous. It would be discourteous to the Kaiser to not commit treason at this point.
And it speaks so much to like despite everything Reinhard has done to like revamp and revise the Empire, it really speaks to how deeply ingrained Empire culture is in the Empire. Like the old Golden Bomb culture is embedded in these people. They cannot escape it. Like the pride that they are slaves to. And I think we'll get into that a little bit more after we see Reinhard's side of. When we also see the mental fucking loopholes that Reinhard jumps through, we will talk about like the ways like Empire culture has perhaps doomed like this regime. But
we get shots of everyone reacting to the news.
Yeah, so Reuenthal makes it official, I guess. Like he basically like. Is this the part where he sends out the like letter that's basically
the start
declaring...
of the next episode? I think.
Okay.
But it shows all the admirals going like, or Bittenfield's like nodding because as the show says, it was shocking, but there was a sense of inevitability that this would happen.
I don't know. For me, I suspect Bittenfield was just nodding because Bittenfield's too dumb to understand the situation, but by keeping his mouth shut and nodding.
I can look cool this way.
Yes. Everybody's like, oh, Bittenfield, man. Even Bittenfield is stoic in a situation like this.
We get a shot of Lang looking at his reflection and licking his lips, going...
Yes, as if you needed more confirmation that Lang is a fucking monster in human shape. Yes, just licking his lips like a fucking cartoon villain.
Mittermeyer's not happy, though.
Yes, Mittermeyer, however, is fucking pissed about this news.
Indeed. Just like kind of a little bit taking it out on his staff, like...
Yeah. As he did, just like he did last time, Reuenthal was accused of treason. Yes, yeah, so the main thing you take away from this scene is Mittermeyer screaming Reuenthal's name into the heavens is, again, God, the Empire is so much.
And now we get to Job Truniht showing up.
Yes.
This is a slimy motherfucker.
And we get this great bit where Reuenthal is like kind of grilling Job Truniht, and like Reuenthal with the most fucking backhanded like compliment of all time, where Reuenthal's like, well, Mr. Truniht, like, if I was being charitable, I assume that every selfish, greedy, horrible thing you've done in the name of destroying democracy was done because you hope one day you will serve as, like...
a warning of what not to do.
In a democracy. Like, I hope that's actually the real plan, and not that you're actually just as horrible as you seem. And Job Truniht is like, actually, no, I'm as horrible as you think I am. And just, Reuenthal is disgusted by how shameless this fucking rat-think motherfucker is. To the point where Reuenthal's like, well, don't worry, Job, I still have one more job for you. And orders Job Truniht to be detained because Reuenthal has a plan for the Iserlohn Republic. He... One way or another, as we suspected, the Iserlohn Republic is going to get dragged into this war. And Reuenthal's plan is that he is going to send a letter to the Iserlohn Republic telling them that if he prevents the Empire from passing through the Iserlohn corridor, not only will he give them the entirety of the former FPA territories back to them, he will also deliver to them Job Truniht.
Yeah,
and which is a very, very tasty bit of bait, cannot be denied. But and we are left kind of wondering how the Iserlohn Republic will respond to that.
Yeah, and we cut to the writings of one Julian Minci at Iserlohn on his musings on Oscar von Reuenthal, the man of extraordinary genius, but also guilty of high treason.
Yes, kind of talking about how, in any other time, hell, in the old era of the Golden Bomb Dynasty, Reuenthal could have become one of their greatest leaders, but
that
he had to be born in the era.
He would be great even in the Lohengram Dynasty if he showed up 3 generations later as someone who would, bring great prosperity to the system as it is at the time.
Right. But the Reuenthal that exists here and now in the founding of the Lohengram Dynasty, perhaps in some ways he was doomed to come into conflict with Reinhard. When you have a star that shines that brightly to the point where it competes with the main star of the show, they will inevitably come to clash in a way that, in many ways, is central to their personalities. This could, not to say this was inevitable, right? We talked about historical contingency a while ago, and perhaps this rebellion could have been avoided, but because of their personalities, and hell, it's not even because of their personalities, right? It's also because of the actions of others acting behind the scenes, like Rubinsky and Lang, and to a certain extent Oberstein. In many ways, that's kind of what was Kircheis's greatest trait, right? Was that Kircheis was in many ways just as talented as Reinhard, but he was built of the very he came from the very specific type of personality archetype that was fine to be in the background. And that's kind of a rare type of person, if I'm being honest. The type of person who is exceedingly competent at their job, but also very humble about it.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, this is what we say when we say Kircheis was literally too good for this universe.
We'll never be good enough for Kircheis.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so we finally cut to Reinhard and the Brunhilde. Yes. Finally, we see what they've been up to. So it turns out that the Brunhilde was kind of isolated from...
Yeah, what they've been up to is drifting through space for a few weeks.
Yes. They have been cut off from all communications to avoid detection. What we find out is that, essentially, for better or worse, what this did was allow Reinhard to basically stew in his feelings about what just happened without any input from any outside influence, which turns out is a bad thing.
Yeah. And meantime, Grillpalzer has been sent to investigate what the hell happened on Urvasi.
Yes, and we also finally get to see those
paratrooping.
The paratroopers from the second OP or something.
Paratrooping in.
Yes, the guys who don't have power armor, kind of just landing.
What they do have is laser tanks.
Yes, they do have some fucking G.I. Joe ass laser tanks, which is very good. So yeah, Grillpalzer is investigating what happened on Urvasi. We find out that I think his name was Winker, whatever.
Yeah, Winkler.
The guy who was in charge of Urvasi was some kind of crazy drug addict, which, as we know about the Earth Cult and their methods, certainly implies some things going on here. And
also, the when interrogating the soldiers under him, they're all like, "No, we were the good guys. Lutz and Mueller were the ones brainwashed by the Earth Cult."
We get some contradictory information from these people.
But a lot of the soldiers were carrying Earth Cult scriptures and items.
Yes. And we get just the subtlest, slightest of facial twitches in Grillpalzer as he is revealing this news.
Yes.
And
the notes that Grillpalzer did not report that Earth Cult stuff was found among the soldiers.
Yeah. He chose to obfuscate that information. And
Grillpalzer's fucking Earth Cult. He's in on it.
Is Grillpalzer a fucking Earth Cult sleeper agent or some shit?
He totally is.
Holy shit. Oh man, of all the things that this show could throw at us,
his interest in astronomy was the hint all along, probably.
Is Grillpalzer the one who's interested in astronomy?
I think so.
I always get the two mixed up, but I think you're right. But yeah, so turns out Grillpalzer maybe up to his own shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, finally Wallen's fleet finds Reinhard. We find out that Reinhard is very much not in a very forgiving mood anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of with that, we kind of end the first
Yeah.
episode.
History is accelerating.
Yes. Not more than 6 months after Yang Wenli's death, we are already
Oh my god.
hurtling.
I don't think it's even been 3 months.
You're right. Like, we are just on another collision course. Just the way this show operates. Like, Reinhard will have done everything that life has to offer before he is 30 at this rate.
Yeah, and so episode 94 opens with Reinhard speaking to Mittermeyer and basically saying, I'm going to order you to fight against Reuenthal, and in accordance with, in respect for your friendship, I will allow you to refuse orders at this one time.
Yeah, kind of initially, it's interesting because initially,
right.
I looked at this and I was like, oh, Reinhard's actually being pretty magnanimous here. Like, he understands that, like, there's a deeply personal stake here in this conflict, and that despite the fact that Mittermeyer is one of his best admirals, there's no point in sending a good admiral into the fight if he is not willing to put his whole heart into it.
Right.
Like, all right, Reinhard being pretty, like, aware of the situation here. But the way Reinhard reacts to what Mittermeyer says next, I think, actually reveals Reinhard's true colors in this conversation.
Yeah, Mittermeyer just like, can we not fight Reuenthal?
Yes.
I'll give you back I will resign. I will do anything.
Right. Mittermeyer says he will basically do anything to convince Reinhard to not. And he's not even saying convince Reinhard to not fight this war, just to talk to Reuenthal. Like Mittermeyer begs him. He says he will do anything. Like, he will resign. He will give up. Like, he will dedicate every victory to Reinhard for the rest of his life. He will serve him loyally until death. If just this one time he will listen to him. And Reinhard is angry hearing this.
How dare you ask me to change my mind?
Right. He is indignant. Like, he yeah, like you said, Iro, he's basically like, how dare you? How dare you ask me to do this? And
it's Reuenthal's fault, not my fault.
Right. Reinhard also says, why should the Kaiser who was almost assassinated, I was almost shot, I lost one of my best admirals, why should I have to be the one who goes groveling to his subordinate? And when you contrast this with last week's internal, like, monologue with Reuenthal, you realize, oh, the real reason why this conflict is inevitable isn't just because of the machinations of Lang and Rubinsky. It's also because Reinhard and Reuenthal, on a personal level, are too damn prideful to step back. Like, the cloth that those two are cut from prevents them from seeing the more peaceful, rational way out of this. Like, despite the fact that both men are unbelievably talented and competent and good at their jobs, there are things about the way they are built as people that they cannot escape from.
Yeah. And even though Mittermeyer brings up how last time Reuenthal was accused of treason, it was a plot, and that you trusted him then, like, why not now? It's basically because, like, Lutz died, basically.
Yeah, it's because now Reinhard has an emotional stake in it. Like, and the thing is that we, the viewers, know that Reinhard von Lohengram, the Golden Emperor, the founder of the Golden Age of the Empire, blah, 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 he is not nearly as perfect and splendorous as he seems, right? He is petulant, he is bratty, and he is, most importantly, like, emotional, impetuous, like, fiery, and we see that here, where like we see that here in the contrast between when Reinhardt opens this conversation, right, with Reinhardt, Mittermeyer, my most trusted admiral, like I will give you this one chance to refuse my orders, right? That is Golden Emperor Reinhard von Lohengram.
Right.
And Reinhardt here ranting about how like it's not fair that he should have to be the one, he should have to be the better man, he should have to be the bigger man. This is the real Reinhardt.
Right.
This is the Reinhardt that intrinsically this is the Reinhardt that intrinsically prevents him from creating like the true golden age a man of his talents could create if he were not so like emotionally unhinged.
Yeah.
And Mittermeyer like argues that like this is clearly a plot. Like
right.
Like Reuenthal like because like hell, Reinhardt said it himself when they were being chased in the limousine. Like this assassination plot is too shoddy to be Reuenthal's. And Mittermeyer himself argues like this must be Lang. Like we know Lang is shady, he's up to something, and Lang works for Oberstein. Like even if they didn't actively pull the trigger, they are undeniably involved in this somehow. We should investigate them. Like because remember, Reuenthal's whole thing is that he's like specifically denouncing Oberstein and Lang. And that, like, think about it, like, that's where all of his rage, like,
right.
Reuenthal's rage isn't even directed at Reinhardt. It is directed at the people that serve him. And Mittermeyer's like, please, just like, you don't even need to kill them, just demote them. If you demote like, Oberstein
take away
and
their
Lang,
power to influence this meeting, basically.
Like, if you do that, that will satisfy Reuenthal enough to at least be convinced.
Come to the table, yeah.
To come to the table. And here's where like,
Reinhardt's straight up like fucking how dare you claim they have more influence than I do.
Right. Like he claims that, but because of that pride, he ends up defending Oberstein and Lang. Like Reinhardt literally goes to bat for Heydrich Lang in this conversation.
I think it's less going to bat for them and more saying, how dare you like say that my appointments have any more influence than I do.
Right, but like that's the thing. Reinhardt is too prideful to admit they have influenced his rule.
Right.
Like, remember, Reinhardt did not hire...
Why should I demote two high-ranking guys to bring back one who's rebelling?
Right. Like Reinhardt's pride refuses, like, prevents him from seeing that, like that Oberstein and Lang's appointment have influenced his empire. I mean, hell, Reinhardt didn't even hire Lang. Remember, Oberstein hired Lang. Like, Oberstein hired Lang kind of in secret. And then
that's right,
somehow Lang started walking around in public, and Reinhardt was like, well, that was Oberstein's...
Right, well, I mean, like, Oberstein is... Remember, we keep thinking of Oberstein as, that fucking snake Oberstein, but he's on the same rank as Reuenthal Mittermeyer.
Yes. And, like, we see time and time again that Reinhardt is not ignorant of Oberstein's reputation amongst his other admirals, but like also Oberstein has never done anything publicly that could like Oberstein's done a very good job these last 4 seasons of like staying out of the spotlight and letting other people take the hit. But
that's too like this line here where Mittermeyer saying he'll resign alongside Oberstein and Lang to as a recompense, basically. And
yeah, like he is basically Mittermeyer is saying he will give everything he has that he owns to Reinhardt to convince him.
And Reinhardt's like, "Oh, you're saying you're going to retire in your 30s? I never thought one of our finest admirals would take the path of Yang Wen-li."
And it's like, Reinhardt's getting really like petulant here. Like he's just getting so like petty and shitty in this conversation, and it reminds you that like, oh right, like this is the real Reinhardt. Not that like Reinhardt isn't capable of compassion and empathy and like rational thinking, but like when it really gets down to it, this is the part of Reinhardt that takes over when he is pushed into a corner.
Yeah,
and the conversation kind of just ends inconclusively. Like Mittermeyer realizes he cannot convince. Yeah. Yes. What I mean is that like Mittermeyer bends the knee. He says that even if he cannot convince Reinhardt, he will still serve him. And you can tell this really hurts Mittermeyer. But like we also know that this is the choice Mittermeyer always would have made. Like he is an empire. He is a Reinhardt man through and through, and he will serve regardless. And
yep. And This is when Reuenthal's like an official declaration goes out, sent to the imperial government, not
to the Kaiser.
Reinhard.
Yes.
Saying that taking advantage of Reinhard, that Oberstein and Lang are, exerting too much influence over the government, purging the people unnecessarily, and that if necessary, Reuenthal will put forth whatever means to remove them.
Yes. So again, Reuenthal continues to like. This is interesting. This is an interesting thing because there are a lot of various factors come into play.
Yes.
So I guess the first thing we'll say is that Reinhard. This letter makes Reinhard even more mad,
right?
Because it's not even the contents of the letter that he hates, but it is the way they are phrased and presented, right? Like, this goes all the way back. Like, if we want to talk about the power of phrasing, this goes all the way back to season 1, where the Empire calls the FPA the rebels, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, the power of language, the power of phrasing to influence how a culture perceives, like, a concept. Reuenthal is not doing this accidentally. He is addressing the imperial government and not Reinhard because he's trying to make a statement here. And also, he focuses the majority of his ire in this written letter to Oberstein and Lang, because he knows that if he were to accuse Reinhard of anything, that would garner him no sympathy, right? Largely, people are loyal to Reinhard. But a lot of people really fucking hate Oberstein and Lang. And so if he directs his, like, letter towards, like, the wrong, like, the misdeeds of those two, that earns him more sympathy from the rest of the Empire, because, look, Reinhard's a great guy, but everybody knows Oberstein and Lang are up to some fucking shady shit.
Yep.
But also, this, the way this is phrased, like, it pisses Reinhard off, because to Reinhard, this is an insult to his authority, right? The way Reuenthal phrases this letter...
When did I let Oberstein and Lang influence my decisions? Like, if I listened to them, then I wouldn't have appointed Reuenthal as governor of Neue Land.
Right, like, he is furious because the implications of the letter imply, in some way, Oberstein and Lang are influencing me above their station. And if there's anything Reinhard hates, it's having his authority questioned, which, like, some might say is number 1 on the list of, like, like, red lights, like red lights for traits
for an autocratic ruler.
Yes, of a despot, of a tyrant, is getting indignant and defensive of having their authority questioned. This is all, like, when this is all happening, and in the meantime, Mittermeyer is kind of coming to his own conclusions about what he has to do. And I kind of get into some interesting things about culture that I think we in the 21st century maybe get a little confused by, but I think that the more you think about it, I think the more it, like, really speaks to, like, how, like, this is what good fiction does, is make you realize, like, what can be interesting about examining other cultures, is that Mittermeyer arrives at the conclusion that the reason why he decided to bend the knee to Reinhard and agree to fight Reuenthal is because he believes that he has to be the one who fights Reuenthal, because if he doesn't, Reinhard will be disgraced, and in relationship, the Lohengrin dynasty could be disgraced by this precedent.
Right. If, like, the great, perfect Kaiser, Reinhard von Lohengrin has to dirty his own hands to deal with a supposed traitor, like, it doesn't look good.
Right. It doesn't reflect well on his authority, because the thing is, like, as much as we all love, look, we all love an anime when the final boss dude is like, all right, I guess I'll have to deal with you myself, takes off the gloves, unbuttons their shirt,
whips it off.
Right, goes full Senator Armstrong on you, like,
full
everybody. Yes, yes. Everybody loves that everybody loves that in a video game and in anime and a piece of fiction, when the guy at the top is also the biggest ass kicker, and they finally step down from their throne and unsheath their sword or whatever, cracks their knuckles. We love it. But that in a society
That's only,
in a
that's only
government.
okay because you've already wiped out all of their forces.
Right. Like the idea is like in an actual functioning government, it's a very bad look if the ruler of a nation has to fight because that implies a not only a sense of desperation but also a sense of necessity for the survival of the nation. Like time and time again in history, we actually see that like rebellions are usually put down by generals, not emperors. And the reason for this is because it's not just a practicality thing because you in the old days it'd be a real bad idea to have the emperor on the front lines, but also the idea is that like it is important for a ruler to portray rebellions as petty, as insignificant, as tiny. So Reinhard, who sees Reuenthal rebelling, waves his hand daintily, and Mittermeyer puts down the rebellion.
Pulls an
That
Eisenach.
implies, yeah, or pulls an Eisenach. Yes, that implies in the cultural like perception of the event that Reuenthal's rebellion was so tiny, so weak, so insignificant. Reinhard barely paid any attention to it. He put it down like it was nothing. But a Reinhard who has to actually take to the field and put down Reuenthal, that implies, wait, does that mean Reuenthal was actually almost equal to you? Like, was Reuenthal such a threat that you actually had to fight him, like, face to face on equal terms?
Right.
Because then, what does that say about you as a ruler if you are pushed to that degree?
Right.
So,
they say it's like, they specifically note that's different from going against Yang Wenli, who is, like the leader of a foreign body.
Right. And like, yes, and that's the thing, like, against a foreign body, you actually maybe want the ruler to be there because that's more glory for him, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Reinhard is personally there and personally defeats Yang Wenli, that's an accolade in the history book that belongs to him. But when it comes to rebellions, like, it's if we go back to our constant Legend of the Galactic Heroes takes place at a 7-Eleven analogy, like, essentially what has happened here, right, is like, Reuenthal is like chilling in the parking lot, and Reinhard is about to go check out Reuenthal's sweet new ride. But on the way there, he like stops to fill up on gas, and the Earth Cult come and slash his tires.
They said,
and then they like write in like
turf.
They write in like yes, they write graffiti. Reuenthal was here, and Reinhard gets hella pissed about this. He's like, "Fuck, Reuenthal, you son of a bitch." Meanwhile, Reuenthal hears about this, and he's like, "What? No, how dare?"
Everyone knows my signature is that Reuenthal was here.
Reuenthal would be the kind of guy who'd be like, "I didn't slash Reinhardt's tires, but I would if I could." And like everybody hears that, and like, "Oh shit, maybe Reuenthal actually did do it." And then what happens here is Reuenthal sends a text message to Reinhardt that's like, "I didn't do it. It was Oberstein and Lang, but also you kind of suck." And Reinhardt's like,
"I'm not paying for your tires."
Right, "I'm not paying for your tires." And Reinhardt's like, "That bastard, how dare he? Like, I'll have him destroyed." But he can't look that way publicly. So in public, so Reinhardt's DMs are furious right now. His DMs to Mittermeyer, his DMs to Mueller is like, Reinhardt is furious. He can barely spell correctly. It's all emojis, very angry, lots of volcanoes. He's very mad. But like publicly Reinhardt has to be
he's like, "Man, that asshole slashed my tires."
Yeah, Reinhardt has to keep it cool publicly. He's got to be like, "I'm not mad. I guess I'll just put on my new tires." Right, I'll get my new tires, and I'll send Mittermeyer to go beat up Reuenthal. I don't need to do it. I don't need to worry. Like, because Reuenthal, not Reuenthal, Reinhard, in this analogy, he must appear cool at all times.
Uh-huh.
If he ever loses his cool in public, he has already lost his authority. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here with why Mittermeyer has to be the one who fights Reuenthal first. And however, before all this, but before we get to that fight, Mittermeyer also recognizes there's some other business he's also got to take care of. And we see kind of a dark shade cast over Mittermeyer all of a sudden. Like, Mittermeyer has just convinced himself to commit some dark deeds that he believes are necessary to save the Empire.
Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, Lang meets Oberstein in his office, and Lang's like, oh, I guess Reuenthal showed his true colors.
Right.
I'm glad we were so suspicious of him this whole time, right?
Yes, and then Oberstein is like,
chill.
You don't have beef with Reuenthal, right? Yeah, and Lang is like, I don't know why Reuenthal dislikes me. I don't have the slightest clue. I certainly don't have a weird vendetta against him. I'm not mad at all. Like, if Reinhardt is the master of convincing everybody he's not mad, when in fact he's actually very mad, Lang is the opposite. Lang is the guy who is sweating profusely, and like, Lang is the dude in a Discord chat who is not mad, but responds to all like messages towards him within a minute of receiving them. Like, if Reinhardt's the dude who responds to a message that pisses him off, he responds to it like 2 hours later. Like, Reinhardt's like, oh, I just saw this. Not mad, blah, 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 right? Whereas Lang is the dude who, like, when something pisses him off, he is, like, responding within the minute, insisting he's not mad. But we all know that dude's mad as hell.
Yep.
And Oberstein is like, well, it's a good thing you don't have any beef with Reuenthal, because you're coming with me.
If I have to meet him,
to Heinessen. Yes, I'm going on a business trip to meet with Reuenthal, and I need you there with me. And Lang's like, I'm
out later.
Right. He was literally like, you have to talk to my boss, okay? Like, it's literally like, oh my god, it's like, it's not to immediately date this podcast, but it's like the steamed hams thing in The Simpsons, where Lang is Principal Skinner, and like, he is just like, it just fucking literally jumps out the window. Like, he just bails the hell out of there, like, with barely an explanation.
But just outside, he runs right into Fleet Admiral Mittermeyer.
Yes, and Mittermeyer is
angry Mittermeyer.
There's a fury in Mittermeyer's eyes.
Have we seen angry Mittermeyer up to, like, today?
Like, this is the angriest I've ever seen Mittermeyer, and like, if you're pissed off
Mittermeyer,
you know you fucked up. Like you can understand. Like, think about it from Mittermeyer's perspective. Like, he just had to fucking deal with an angry Reinhardt.
Mm-hmm.
He just got home, and all he wants to do is fuck his wife.
Mm-hmm.
He is now forced to fight his best friend. And the reason he's forced to fight his best friend is because of this rat-fink motherfucker named Heydrich Lang. And
fat, bald son of a bitch who licks his lips in the mirror.
Yes, like the fucking caricature of an evil bureaucrat. And we see that Mittermeyer is not, like, just angry. We see Mittermeyer is fucking armed.
He's about to just fucking shoot Lang in the face.
Yes, he's got the pistol out, finger on the trigger. He's literally ready to just bust a cap in Lang right here and now in the middle of this office.
Right outside of Oberstein's office.
Like, ready to just fucking kill him right here and there. Mittermeyer is just like, I don't give a fuck what happens to me. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care. Like, if I could put you in the dirt, like, I don't care what history remembers me as long as they remember that I fucking killed Heydrich Lang. And as much as we were all rooting for this to happen, Kessler steps in. Steps in. Old Kessler, who hasn't had a speaking role in this show in, like,
long time.
I don't know, like 10 episodes, shows up, and he puts a stop to this.
It's his job to put a stop to this kind of thing.
Yes, also because I think Kessler is, by bare technicality, Lang's direct superior.
Yeah.
I think? Yeah, internal affairs. And Kessler is like, I mean, look, we've all watched a police procedural where the hotshot
by
cop,
the books,
right, angry for revenge, is about to kill the suspect, but without him being arrested. And Kessler here is here to be the good cop who's like, nah, like, we can't do that. Like, what kind of precedent would it set if admirals could just start murdering bureaucrats in cold blood? Like, like, we got to do this by the books. We'll arrest him the right way. Like, we'll find some dirt on him. A guy like Lang can't hide everything.
Yeah.
And like, he's saying that, like, believe me, I'll do everything in my power to deal with Lang. Just please don't just murder him here in public.
I have a minor story to tell about this moment because
Okay,
way
please
back,
do.
way back when Kessler first appeared in like episode like 14, I was like thinking to myself, that dude's voice is familiar. So I was looking up his voice, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a spoiler that said like, and then Kessler stopped Mittermeyer from killing, and I closed the tab. But I saw, but I thought but Lang and Yang are one letter off.
Oh man!
So
wow!
For this entire show, I was waiting for Mittermeyer to have Yang Wenli at his mercy, and for some reason, Kessler would stop him. And I was like,
oh wow!
And so, like 10 episodes ago, Yang Wenli dies, and I'm like, wait, what about Kessler stopping Mittermeyer? And it didn't connect me at all until we were in the middle of watching this.
Oh, and you finally realized what you would.
Oh, it was Lang.
This is what you got spoiled on. That's a really interesting. What a weirdly random but interesting thing to get spoiled on for this show. But that's fascinating. Like we don't need to get into it here. Like on things we may have been accidentally spoiled by, But
we did have 100 comments telling us to, oh man, you gotta make sure you watch episode 82. Be careful. It's like, all right, guys.
Oh, did they really name drop episode 82 specifically?
Some people did.
All right. I mean, I think by the time we got to episode 80 or so, we knew the writing was on the wall. So, but yeah, that is interesting though. Like that's really funny. Just. I want to imagine the alternate fucking universe where Legend of Galactic Heroes does play out, with somehow Mittermeyer has cornered Yang in like a room.
I assumed it would be like after Reinhardt won and like Yang when he's been detained, right?
Oh, and if something drives Mittermeyer to want to murder Yang Wenli in cold blood.
Guess I don't know.
And somehow Kessler would play the pivotal role in saving Yang's life.
Yeah.
Well, you got some of the details right there. Yeah. So yes, Kessler convinces Mittermeyer not to do it. Mittermeyer
not to kill this termite who's wearing the mask of a human being.
Yes. Lang's starting to accumulate as many appellations as Yang Wenli. Just some very good ones here. But yeah, Mittermeyer backs off, and Lang is like fucking like getting on his knees and like oh, thank you, Kessler, you're such a great boss. Kessler takes one look at him, doesn't say a word, and just walks away. It's very good.
Yep. And Hilda goes to meet with Reinhardt.
Yes.
And talk about the current situation. Basically.
Yes, even Hilda is like, I mean, not that even Hilda, of course Hilda is like,
by the way, Overstein and Lang are...
Yeah.
Well, she says, like, play beside Overstein, who's technically a high-ranking officer and technically above board. Lang's full of shit.
Yeah, like, Hilda, even Hilda of all people, is advocating that, we should do something about Lang. Like, Lang needs to be arrested. And Reinhardt, again, you say he's not defending Lang. Maybe he's not defending Lang, but Reinhardt is jumping through some weird mental hoops.
Reinhardt is seems to be fully convinced that Lang is not a threat whatsoever.
Right. Like, Reinhardt says that, I don't need to worry about Lang, because even if he's done some shady shit, Lang doesn't even matter enough to do dangerous things. So there's no need to deal with him. And it's not until Hilda finally shoves a piece of paper in his face.
Right.
That's like, just read the fucking report, okay?
Like Lutz's report on how Lang orchestrated the bombing where Silverburst died, and that rather not that he set up the bomb, but that
he orchestrated the bombing, but he trumped up the false charges against Boltic.
Yes.
And then had him assassinated while imprisoned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Reinhardt's like, I can't believe I was protecting the rights of the small-time crook and causing frustration
Right.
for my vassals. But oh well, it's too late for Reuenthal. I'm still gonna fuck him up.
That's the problem with this entire conversation, this entire scene, is Reinhardt finally realizes how much of a ride he's been taken for by Lang. Like, Reinhardt's pride refused to allow him to believe that someone as insignificant as Lang could influence the way he carries out his leadership.
And
But he
now,
did.
yeah, and then he's
And
straight up like, "Well, it's too late for Reuenthal. Like, I now
yeah,
have to do it on Lutz's honor."
right. It's like, think about like how like what kind of absurd brand of pride like that you have to be operating on, where that is the conclusion you arrive at. Is not, oh man, Lang pulled the wool over my eyes. Me, Reinhard. Maybe I should think about the people I hire, and maybe I should not underestimate the influence they hold on me. No, instead, I'm just going to commit to the exact plan that they hatched for me. Like,
Uh-huh.
despite the fact that I now know what their plan is, I'm still going to go along with it anyways. Like, what are you
Reinhardt.
doing, Reinhard?
Yeah.
And we also find out that Hilda might be pregnant.
Because of course the Empire, the Galactic Empire rules of narrative convenience mean that after having sex once, Hilda's pregnant and
Yes.
has morning sickness.
Yes, and she decides she's not going to tell Reinhardt about this, which, oh god, you look. I'm not a big watcher of like soap operas and stuff, but I know enough about like fiction to know that like a woman hiding her pregnancy never ends well. It never ends well in fiction. So,
Yeah.
oh Hilda, I wish you were just a little bit more genre savvy here. But she decides to not say anything. I guess, I don't know what, to not distract Reinhardt while he goes to lead
I
his
guess
next war.
so.
But
Yeah.
I don't know, man. If
Well,
I were Hilda and like telling Reinhardt that I'm pregnant could like maybe get him to fucking step off even just a little from this war, like that's a dirty trick to play, but I'd at least consider it. But yeah,
and
speaking of people,
oh,
trying to get pregnant, I guess.
Jesus
Mittermeyer,
Christ.
or maybe not Mittermeyer. We're talking about Mittermeyer's wife, but Mittermeyer's not trying to get pregnant. He's trying to get somebody else pregnant.
He visits his wife and
Yes, says goodbye because he's off
you
to
know,
another war.
and they hug and kiss and oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure Reuenthal will come to his senses and don't
It's it,
worry, I'll be fine.
it's a very sweet scene. If in many ways, if for example, if Kazanu and his wife are the most enjoyable couple to watch in this show because of their very good verbal jabbing at each other, then Mittermeyer and Eveline are probably the sweetest couple in this show. Just because, like, on one hand, it's a little much how much of a perfect couple they are, but on the other hand, it's fucking Mittermeyer we're talking about. Like, of
Right.
course he would be the textbook perfect husband in every
Fucking,
way.
I love the old images from that gotcha that no longer exists.
Yes,
The Christmas Mittermeyer who has all the
yes,
presents and a
yes,
cake, and
yes.
it's yeah.
Yes, that is Mittermeyer in a nutshell. And but Mittermeyer's like, don't worry, I'm sure. Yeah, like I'm sure it'll be fine. Mittermeyer just
Uh-huh.
literally like this scene is essentially Mittermeyer taking all the plot armor that he may have accrued over this entire show's run and just tossing it out the window. Like, plot armor, what's that? I don't need it. And it's like Mittermeyer did not learn a single goddamn thing from Kempf, like all
Right.
those episodes ago.
At least
Like,
eventually can't swear blood oath against Jung Won Lee.
yeah, no more. The saddest thing, the most fucked up thing about this war is that there will be nobody to swear blood oaths against because in all likelihood they will all be dead by the end of the season. But yeah, so we find out that once again, 40,000 ships and 5 million men are being mobilized to
Yep.
to fight this war.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, once again you realize, oh good, I wonder how many of these men will make it back at the end of this war, and yeah, at another war at the end of. Let me
we
remind
send
you,
5 million people to their potential deaths on Lutz's
yes,
honor.
on Lutz's honor, on once again a war Reinhard could have prevented, that he cannot and will not, because he is too ridiculous of a human being. Like, I kind of want to get into it here right now, because now we've seen both Reinhard and Reuenthal's side of the story. I feel like if last week, so I'll admit, if last week was me complaining a bit about, like, the type of cosmic causality that the Empire operates on that lets them get away with the most ridiculous bullshit, then I will admit, this is a conflict that feels like it could truly only ever happen in the Empire with people who were born in the Empire.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that the type of personalities that are at play here, the type of rational, quote unquote, rational conclusions that these individuals come to could only ever happen in the Empire. And this time it's to their detriment. This is not to say that the FPA has not fought civil wars, right? Yang has literally fought what sounds like multiple civil wars in his own goddamn lifetime. So obviously the FPA is not like immune to mutiny and disunity, but a conflict like this would never happen in the FPA because of the types of personalities that exist in the FPA. When Yang was accused of not even treason, when Yang was just accused of essentially the FPA leadership saying they didn't like the tone of his voice, what did Yang do? He didn't like throw a tantrum. He didn't get indignant. Yang ruefully sighed, took a swig of whiskey, and got on that shuttle and went back to Heinessen for questioning. Because that's what a democracy does. Yep. That's what people who believe in a democracy do.
It's a matter of accountability.
Like, yes. And there Yang explained himself. And of course, this is not to imply that the FPA is in any ways a fair, in its current form anyways, or at the time was a fair or just system. Of course, if they really wanted to imprison and Yang Wenli, they could have. But the veneer of a legal precedent, like, allowed Yang to show up there unarmed and make the reasonable assumption that while the FPA leadership would pull some ratchet shit, they could not pull off the kind of ratchet shit that the Empire could pull off, right? Like, they could not just, at that point in the FPA's lifetime, they could not just, like, shoot him in a windowless room and toss his corpse into a ditch. Because that's ostensibly not what democracies do. Now, of course, by the time that Leninkoff is in power and the FPA has, Labello is in charge, of course, then we see the FPA in a much more desperate situation. But at least during the period of the initial inquiry into Yang Wenli, before the FPA's, like, dissolution, we see that, like, okay, in a democracy, when a military leader is questioned, what a good military leader does is show up for the hearing, right? Like, he does not start a coup. He does not take up arms because he did not like the tone of his leaders, right? But in the Empire, where, like, despite how much they say they are, like, they're like revising the way things are done and they're turning into a more progressive empire, it's still an autocracy. And as a result, it is still extremely personality driven. And that means that, like, that means, like, to the Empire, forget about legal precedent. What really matters here is personal pride. And the problem is that Reuenthal and Reinhard both have unbelievable amounts of personal pride.
Yes. And the military power to, like, try to enforce that pride.
Yeah. And so the word I almost want to use with the Empire is that these episodes make me feel like there's almost a latent undercurrent of entitlement that operates underneath the foundation of the entire Empire. Like, when I say entitlement, I mean Reuenthal saying, it's not fair that I'm accused of treason. I don't deserve this. Like, it's not my fault.
I shouldn't have to apologize.
Right.
I didn't do anything.
And then on Reinhard's side, like, it's not fair that I should have to go open, like, empty-handed to Reuenthal. My admiral is dead. I'm the one in charge. It's, again, they can act like this because autocracies allow for these kind of personalities to not only act but prosper in the political stage. A general who acted like this in a democracy would, well, okay, in an ideal functioning liberal democracy, no military leader would ever be allowed to act like this because the legal precedent says that military leadership cannot act like this. And it is those checks and balances that theoretically allow the preservation of democracy, whereas autocracy is so personality driven, like, that in many ways, you know, obviously it's mainly because of Lang and Rubinsky's interference, but also the fact of the matter is that it's also Reuenthal and Reinhardt's fault that this war is happening the way it is.
Either one of them could have backed down, but the personalities do not allow them to do so.
Right, like this is the part of the 7-Eleven analogy where now Reinhardt and Reuenthal are getting into their souped up cars and playing a game of chicken, and all they had to do to prevent this car crash. Oh, and by the way, Mittermeyer is in between the two cars.
No, guys, stop!
Mittermeyer ran between the two cars. He's got his hands outstretched, and he's like, "Wait, guys, stop!" And both Reinhardt and Reuenthal are like, "Oh shit, I don't want to hit Mittermeyer, but
I refuse to back down."
Right. And all they have to do to stop this is for one of them just to eat their pride for a little bit. But they can't, and they won't. And now, these 40,000 ships and 5 million soldiers, how many of them are going to die for this pride? But yeah, so with that, we finally round into episode 95, where Grillpalzer meets with Reuenthal after the Uravasi inspection.
Admiral Grillpalzer, who has finished his investigation at Uravasi, shows up to swear his allegiance to Reuenthal's cause.
Yeah, Grillpalzer's like, yeah, you know what? I looked at the things going on here, and I'm like, I think I can climb up this ladder higher if I team up with you. And Reuenthal seems awfully quick to trust, but Reuenthal rationalizes it to Bergengrund that, well, men who are as bald-faced about their ambitions as men like Grillpalzer are pretty easy to, like, control because they're driven purely by ambition.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, since we know that maybe Grillpalzer is playing a longer game here, turns out that maybe Reuenthal himself might be getting taken for a ride.
Yeah. And
Grillpalzer essentially just asks that he wants to become Chief Minister of Military Affairs if they win the war, and that he will also he will also meet with and convince Knapstein to join, because Knapstein has refused and is currently being placed under house arrest. So Grillpalzer meets with Knapstein, and he claims that actually he's a double agent, that he is planning to play both sides of this. He tells Knapstein that, look, how did Reuenthal and Mittermeyer rise through the ranks so quickly? It's because they fought in wars and they won fights.
Mm-hmm.
And this is echoing back to an old conversation that these two actually had all the way back in, I think it was like season 2 or 3, where Grillpalzer and Knapstein talk about how, with this war coming to a close, we are losing our chances for glory. Yeah. And it kind of casts their actions in this show to an interesting light, because we need to remember, like, Grillpalzer gets dunked on pretty hard by Bittenfield during his, like, last stand. And how much of that is Grillpalzer, like, being too gung-ho to try and win glory because he knows that, like, because he's an admiral. How do military leadership gain ranks? They gain ranks in wartime. And so how much of that was, like, his deficiencies as a tactician versus his own, like, subconscious desperation to, like, win Reinhardt's favor in the few, like, available wars they have left.
Yeah.
And so how much of this is Grillpalzer trying to convince Knapstein that, hey, this is our last, this is our big chance to, like, make it, like, to win big in our careers. But because we also know that Grillpalzer has, if he is not an Earth cult agent, then he is like
At least shady.
shady to some degree. So it's hard to tell how much of this, is also him playing Napstein, versus
Right.
his own
Of
ambitions.
course,
But
Napstein
regardless,
doesn't want to sign up with Reuenthal. He wants to stay loyal to the Kaiser. And so Grillpalzer basically says, we'll pretend we're with Reuenthal and just, you know,
we'll shoot him in the back at the last second and earn
yep,
Reinhardt's favor.
betray him in the end.
Yes, which I don't know, those guys know Reinhardt very well, but I feel like Reinhardt is one of those people that does not take well to traitors, even when it benefits him.
Right.
Just saying. But
only if he asks
then
first.
again,
Only okay if Reinhardt asks first.
Yes, if Reinhardt asks you to betray first, then yes, you're in the good. But
yep, and
just saying, this is the kind of plan that if you told to Bittenfield, we would post that screen cap of Bittenfield saying, "Don't you ever bring that bullshit up to me ever again." But yes, so
and
with that taken care of, we also find out that
Reuenthal meets with Alzheimer.
Yes, who is Lutz's sister's husband.
Yes, who basically says, "I'm not gonna cooperate with you, and I can't side with you in any way until the matter of Lutz's death is resolved in a satisfactory manner."
Yes, and Reuenthal being pretty fair here. I mean, how much of this is Reuenthal playing the PR game versus actually what Reuenthal believes as a person?
Right.
But regardless, the result is same. The end result is the same. Reuenthal writes a letter exonerating Alzheimer, saying that Alzheimer played no part in the rebellion. And Reuenthal himself actually muses that,
why did I write this letter? That means I'm gonna lose.
Right, that's the thing. It's Reuenthal's wait, that's a letter to losers, right? If I win this, I don't need to exonerate Alzheimer. Am I?
Yeah.
Reuenthal comes to this canny intuition of perhaps the inevitability of this conflict and the way this show's going. He's wait, am I fated to lose this fight? It's oh, Reuenthal. But
yeah.
But yes. So after that, finally, I guess the news kind of gets to. He basically makes the rebellion official, and that news kind of reaches the admirals. There's a good bit here where Bittenfield is basically "Oh shucks, why would Reuenthal do such a thing?" Which I thought was pretty funny. Once again, they all muse at, if only Siegfried Kircheis were here.
Yeah, if only.
Could this rebellion have been avoided? And I think the answer there is obviously yes, because I think. Yeah. But and speaking of Siegfried Kircheis, we see that Mueller is being awarded the Siegfried Kircheis
Medal of Honor or whatever.
Yes, Medal of Valor or something to Mueller for his actions in saving Reinhardt's life. Mueller responds with the most Mueller-ass statement in the world, where he accepts the medal, but he refuses the promotion because he believes that Lutz
truly deserves the promotion.
Yes. Instead, Mueller pulls a Mittermeyer and instead begs for something else. And what he asks for is for Reinhardt to spare Reuenthal. And Reinhardt
he's not having it.
Reinhardt is what? You too? All of you people!
It's not my fault, god damn it.
It's not my fault. If y'all like Reuenthal so much, well, why don't you just go team up with him instead?
Yep. Take up with him.
Reinhardt and Reuenthal are just both human disasters in the most entertaining way possible, but in a way that will be inevitably the most tragic for the good of this galaxy. And Reinhardt hears none of it.
Mueller wishes, I wish Hilda were here.
Yes. Yeah, add that to the, I wish X were here right now. If only Hilda Mariendorf were here, maybe we could talk some reason to Reinhardt.
Yep.
But,
and we also are informed that about 12,000 ships led by High Admiral MECKLINGER have launched towards the Iserlohn corridor.
Yes.
And Reinhard basically says, I wonder how Yang Wen Li would have reacted to this. Make sure that, if if Iserlohn dares to interfere with this, if they dare to like sign up with Reuenthal, it's the perfect excuse to finally take them down.
Yes. Reinhardt essentially says, we will find out the quality of Yang's protege by how they choose to respond to this.
Will Julian Minci be a myopic schemer?
Or does he know how to play the long game, essentially? And so, speaking of Iserlohn, in the first time in these 3 episodes, we finally return to the Iserlohn Republic, where we find out Reuenthal has actually sent his own envoy to Iserlohn in the form of none other than one Murai.
Oh yeah, Murai. With that,
Yeah,
like
Murai,
now that he's not in a like uniform, his full Phoenix Wright hair is on display.
Yes, Murai kind of rocking his Murai rocking his Ace Attorney prosecutor look pretty well here. Like he's got a nice suit and all. Like
it's so
Murai
weird
seems
to
to be
him not in uniform.
Yeah, I mean it's always weird to see any of these guys not in uniform. Like brief tangent, but I will say maybe that's the thing I can appreciate slightly more about DNT is I feel like we see Yang and the rest of the FPA guys in like their civilian outfits a little bit more often.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I feel like in the original FPA, Yang was in military uniform 24/7. I did not know that man even owned like a sweater until he quote unquote, he temporarily retired during season 3. But like I can appreciate seeing them in their civilian clothes more often, just to remind you, hey, these guys are more than just military dudes. But yeah, Murai is there. Reuenthal picked Murai to deliver the message to the Iserlohn Republic and tells Julian about Reuenthal's offer. And Julian kind of muses. He kind of thinks about it a bit. He kind of stews on it. Like just
I mean, it's a nice offer.
It is a good offer, right? Like if Reuenthal succeeds, like Julian would go down in history as the man who saved the FPA, right? Like they would catch Job Truniht. And like remember, Julian gave himself 2 goals. He said he gave himself 2 selfish goals, right? The honoring and like furthering of Yang's legacy in the name of like saving liberal democracy as a political concept in the galaxy. And his second more selfish goal was the absolute and complete destruction of those who killed Yang Wen Li. And one of those people was indirectly Job Truniht. And getting their hands on that dude would be very satisfying. But Julian also thinks about the legal precedent.
Right. He basically says if Reuenthal's going to rebel and wants to claim that it's wants to claim a political legitimacy for his rebellion, he's either going to have to find Erwin Joseph II and the bungling poet and claim that he's reviving the Golden Bound dynasty, or he's going to have to claim that he's reviving the FPA, which is ridiculous because of his situation. But if he's trying to do this within the boundaries of the existing empire, that would make it an internal power struggle that the Iserlohn Republic should not get involved in.
Yes. Also, I just want to say real quick, just to address it, we know that Landsberg is the bungling poet and Flegel is the idiot with the bowl cut.
Yes.
I know we have mixed those 2 up in the past. We just want to make sure everybody knows that we know that Landsberg is the bungling poet. And yes, we all wish to see him on screen again.
Bring back Schumacher.
Yes, bring back the Landsberg Schumacher Gaiden, please.
Yep, and everyone's like, yeah, you're right, but what about Job Trunicht's head?
Right, how satisfying would it be?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they basically come to the conclusion that as tempting as it is, like because of how weak of a position the Iserlohn Republic is in, it is so tempting to take this because
right.
I think they know it and Reuenthal knows it, right? Like they will never get a deal this good ever again. Like for the rest of Julian's lifetime, they will never get a deal this good. Like, but that's the thing; it is also too good of a deal, too good to believe. Like,
right.
Like, yes, of course, if Reuenthal won, if Reuenthal toppled the Lohengrin dynasty and took over the empire, Reuenthal would probably honor his word because
Probably.
I mean, look, I would not rate Reuenthal the highest on the honorable scale, but in terms of like being true to his word, I would say if Reuenthal promises you something, he'd probably, make good on it. But if it fails, it would be the complete and utter absolute destruction of the Iserlohn Republic.
Yeah.
And so the cost of failure is also too high.
There was a quick phrase here I liked a lot. They described Reuenthal as having picaresque metal.
Yes, which is, man, I don't know if I've ever seen that word show up in an anime. But hell, I feel like I only learned about that word like 6 months ago. So
like when like Persona 5 came out.
Yes, essentially. But also one quick thing I want to point out because it's very funny and it doesn't matter that much. But when Mirai shows up initially at Iserlohn,
That's right.
Paulin immediately ducks out.
Oh no, I can't deal with this square.
Yeah, like this. Poplin just immediately bails. Like he doesn't. He's like, I don't want to get chewed out by Mirai. So just Poplin, you fucking sack of shit.
Yep.
But speaking of Poplin being very good, Shenkop shows up, kind of stops Julian in the hallway, and Julian's like, "What do you want, Shenkop?" And Shenkop's like, "Okay,
picture this."
Hear me out." Like it's ridiculous that Shenkop even suggests this, but it's just like Shenkop's like, yes, Shenkop is like, "All right, hear me out. What if I go back to Heinessen with Mirai?" And I kidnap Reuenthal and assassinate Job Truniht. Just what if?
And also, I'm holding an axe. It'll be really cool.
Yes. And Julian, like, basically has the same reaction that we do of, like, what are you... Are you even real right now? Like, right. But also, there's a part of you that's like,
going, I want in on this too.
Poplin jumps in and is like, hell yeah, that sounds more fun than what we're currently doing at Iserlohn. And I'm just like,
there's a part of you.
Yes, like, there's a part of you that's like exasperated, but there's also a part of you that's like, I mean, if anyone could pull it off,
yeah,
would it be Walter Shenkop and Olivier Poplin? I mean, I don't know. Throw Louis Mashengo in there.
Oh hell yeah!
Like, I think the three of them could pull it off.
They could probably.
I think if those three were sent, if those three were sent to
throwing ability,
if those three were sent to Heinessen, weapon procurement OSP, I think maybe those three could pull it off. I mean, I don't know they'd be able to survive getting back to Iserlohn, but I think if the goal was just to end the lives of Reuenthal and Job Truniht, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, Reuenthal's a pretty damn good fighter. We know this, but he was only going 1v1 against Shenkop, and Shenkop had a time constraint. But against Walter Shenkop, leader of the Rosenritter, Louis Mashengo, the strength of 10 men and his pillar throwing, and Olivier Poplin, modern Renaissance man. Yes,
modern Renaissance man to rival that of Admiral Mecklinger.
Yes. I'm just saying maybe. But yeah, speaking of Mecklinger, then we find out that
Julian puts his foot down, and does not allow Poplin to go on this.
Yes, Julian. Yes. And is then informed that, by the way, Mecklinger is on the phone. And in the greatest blue balling
I know, right?
This show ever committed, it teases us with Mecklinger and then pulls
Mecklinger and Julian in the same room. I'm so excited. Yes. Oh wait.
We are told that in Legend of the Galactic Heroes, the universe, Mecklinger and Julian met in the same room and had a conversation with each other. And we don't get to see it!
There's a slight chance we'll see it next episode. I'm not counting on it. But
I'm not counting it out yet, but the show continues to deny us
what if
our
just want Mecklinger here?
we just want Mecklinger back on screen. I don't understand.
Man, Mecklinger.
I don't understand why this show keeps denying us our rightful Mecklinger screen time, but they do. We return back to Mittermeyer, where we are, or not to Mittermeyer. We return to Reuenthal, where Reuenthal is informed that Mittermeyer is on the phone and wants to speak to Reuenthal directly.
Mm-hmm.
And Reuenthal takes it in his office, and Mittermeyer is basically like, yes, same thing he said to Reinhardt, like,
man.
Yeah, like Mittermeyer is like, please, man, like, hopefully is out here. This is like my last chance. Just, we don't gotta do this. We really don't. Just talk to Reinhardt. I'll vouch for you, man. I'll vouch for you like I've always have. I'm your bro. I got your back. I'm your man. Like, just
Lang's
don't gotta do this.
We're moving forward. Lang's been detained. It's fine. I promise. I'll do everything.
Yes, and Reuenthal leads off with his brand of bullshit of like, was I not put on this earth to fight the Kaiser and gain some satisfaction from it? And Mittermeyer's like, you are being ridiculous, Reuenthal. Like, I know you're not always like this. I know you can be reasonable. And you are drunk with blood-colored dreams.
Yep.
And Reuenthal's just being so dramatic.
I think Reuenthal does basically, like, we get some inner monologue where he basically says he realized years ago that what Reinhardt really truly wants in his heart is to always be fighting a powerful enemy.
Yes,
and that on some level he feels this is something he can fulfill.
I mean, yes.
Also, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
And that he basically starts instead of like telling this to Mittermeyer, which could potentially help defuse the situation, he like knows exactly what to say to kind of push Mittermeyer into the corner of having to fight Reuenthal.
Yes, he basically goads Mittermeyer. Like, in many ways, this speaks to like Reuenthal. Here's the thing. Mittermeyer is Reuenthal's best friend, and I think I truly believe that Reuenthal is also Mittermeyer's best friend. Like, they truly care for each other, and in many ways, this is Reuenthal doing the classic, like, anime JRPG thing of, like,
I never cared about you.
Right. Like, he's, like, trying to push Mittermeyer away, like, emotionally. He's essentially trying to give Mittermeyer the emotional conviction he needs to fight Reuenthal, like, fairly, 1v1, with all of his conviction. And he does this by saying, Mittermeyer, you could join with me. We could, like, rule the Empire as co-emperors. Think about it, man.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And, like, because he knows Mittermeyer would never actually take that deal. Like,
yes,
he knows that. But he says it because he hopes he can, like, not infuriate, but like, exasperate Mittermeyer to the point that he gives up on trying to convince Reuenthal. Yeah. And it works, and it's sad. Like, it's really sad that like this is kind of the last heart to heart these two will probably ever have in this show. I mean, we all remember when the narrator so ominously concluded, like last season.
Drink together.
Like, yes, and it's Reuenthal has never been a good person, but I really do, it really speaks to what a great job they've done of fleshing these characters out, that this really does feel like a deeply tragic moment here where these individuals are all like so drawn into the web of history, the web of like their personalities and the way that causality works both for and against them, that like even if it isn't actually inevitable, it feels inevitable. Like in their heart of hearts, they feel like there was no other way than the path that they are now taking. And kind of with that, Reuenthal hangs up on Mittermeyer. Mittermeyer screams dramatically again and smashes his his like video phone monitor with his fist.
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah.
Mittermeyer also getting lots of ridiculous, overly dramatic moments in these
Yes.
3 episodes.
He's earned them.
He has, and yeah,
The narrator notes that even against Mittermeyer's like wishes, like he feels guilty that the tactician side of him is calmly discerning Reuenthal's weaknesses as a commander and how to exploit them.
yes, and that the fight has been set up.
Yeah.
Mittermeyer versus Reuenthal, a fight that I don't think we would have suspected was inevitable, say back in season 1, but I think on some like instinctual level, perhaps like a part of all our brains recognize that this was a fight that this show.
Like, they set up Reuenthal as a potential like match for Reinhard
Yes,
early on. I think
but
once that was set up, we knew.
Yeah, I meant specifically like Mittermeyer versus Reuenthal is a fight that like in many ways it's like
that's what I mean, like setting that up. Like I think we knew at that point if Reuenthal ever came into conflict with Reinhard, he would also end up coming into conflict with Mittermeyer. Is what I was saying.
Yeah. I mean, in many ways, it feels like in a good anime when they introduce 2 characters who are good at fighting, and even if they're on the same side, someday they will fight each other. Like they have to, because that's how this shit works. Like the audience needs to see that fight. It's interesting because I think in many ways, like I think it kind of reminds me, like I feel like we don't watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes just for the fights. I think we all love the fights, but they're not what bring us here. But I think there'll always be like a tone of disappointment with Yang Wen Li that we never got to see him 1v1 against like the really special people in the Empire, right? Like he dunks on Valen, he dunks on Lutz, he dunks on Kempf, but we never got to see him go 1v1, like purely 1v1, no outside forces against Mittermeyer or Reuenthal, right? Like
every time Reuenthal tried to get Iserlohn that one time.
Yes, and fucking Yang let him have it. Like the idea is that like we never got to see Yang beat Reinhardt's best other than Reinhardt himself, right? Like Yang never fights Kirky Eyes, he never fights the Twin Stars, like because every time Yang fights the Empire at their best, he's fighting against Reinhardt, and as a result, Mittermeyer and Reuenthal kind of get sidelined during those fights. Like they're still contributing, obviously, but like it's clearly meant to be framed as Yang versus Reinhardt, but there's a part of us, I think, that will always dream and wonder, like, how would a fight go between like Yang and Reuenthal, right? Like, what are the things that they would like without any outside interference? Like, how would they play against each other? Like, what are the things? Because we know how Yang dunks on a guy like Bittenfield, but how does Yang dunk on somebody who is closer to his like tactical equal?
Yeah.
And so I think in many ways, like as tragic as I think these coming episodes are about to be, I suspect that also this is a little bit of Legend of the Galactic Heroes indulging us in our, in everybody's kind of personal subconscious warmonger who's like, you kind of want to see Mittermeyer Reuenthal fight because you're generally curious, like, how does it go, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think
who wins?
Yeah. We're getting into speculation of the next few episodes territory at this point, but
yes. I mean, I was doing that on purpose because I did want to get to it a little bit.
I basically figure if the rules of like a narrative say Reuenthal was gonna have to defeat Mittermeyer so he can actually battle Reinhardt.
Yes,
I don't think Reuenthal will like deal a killing blow to Mittermeyer. I mean, because of the scene with Mittermeyer and his wife, I think Mittermeyer is hella dead, but I don't think Reuenthal will pull the final trigger. I would agree with that. I think it's fairly likely that, say, Reuenthal will have Mittermeyer at his mercy and decline to finish him off, which would leave an opening for someone like, say, Grillpalzer to do it.
Yes, somebody who's like Grillpalzer, who is either an Earth Cult's agent, is trying to sow chaos, or is trying to like win personal glory for himself.
If Grillpalzer is going to be real smart, he'll if Grillpalzer is yeah, if Grillpalzer's probably like really smart, he'll get Knapstein to do it.
Oh yeah, take the heat.
Neither Reuenthal nor Reinhard really want to see Mittermeyer die.
Yes. So
like,
yes, let somebody
goading Knapstein to doing that would be
yes, have a fall guy do it. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Is as you said, Iro, the rules of narrative demand that, in the same way that, like, in a good shonen, you know that, oh, this character has to lose the fight because the fight we really want to see is, these two fighting. And so as a result, this guy in the middle who we all like has to lose. But so I think I do agree. Like, I think Reuenthal will probably beat Mittermeyer because they need to fight, because Reinhardt and Reuenthal need to face off against each other. But yeah, I guess that's the thing. It's like, I honestly, I think that your theory kind of holds a lot of weight. I would, like, I'm trying to think like what else might happen instead of that, and I think that your theory is very likely, because if you think about like what Legend of the Galactic Heroes has done in the past in terms of storytelling, it would be very fitting if Reuenthal beats Mittermeyer, lets Mittermeyer retreat, Grillpalzer or Knapstein or some other like overeager like junior officer jumps the gun, pulls the trigger, kills Mittermeyer, right?
Yeah.
Then, as we've seen before with Legend of the Galactic Heroes, often the decisions that people make or the choices people make are not decided just by their own personal feelings on the matter, but also by the politics that surround them. So imagine, Grillpalzer, like, you're right, maybe he'll go to somebody else, but for now we'll just say, use this example. Grillpalzer kills Mittermeyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way Legend of Galactic Heroes has done its storytelling in the past, you could see a situation where then, to add to the tragedy, Reuenthal has to take credit for it. Because because think about it.
Yeah.
If a subordinate acts out against Reuenthal's orders, that actually reflects poorly on his leadership.
It does, yeah.
And then that actually hurts his prestige as a leader. And that actually, and again, that means that Reuenthal, despite the fact that he did not want to do that, might actually, by the very nature of society itself and culture itself, be forced to take ownership of Mittermeyer's death, because it is better for the society to see him as a monster with conviction than a leader with a poor handling on his subordinates. Like,
right.
It speaks to like the monstrous ways in which society and culture push us into making choices that we don't agree with, because it is in some sick way better for society to perceive us this way. Like, better to be seen as a monster than as like somebody with like weak convictions. And I could totally see something like that happening, right?
Yeah.
Like Reuenthal like blaring on the video screens for all to see, despite the fact that he hates it, that, yeah, I killed Mittermeyer, so what of it, right? Because the real story of, oh, he couldn't even keep a lid on his own subordinates would actually make him seem even weaker by comparison. And
yeah,
I think this could happen. Like, the more we say it out loud, the more I'm convinced that this might actually be how it plays out. But the thing I love about Legend of Galactic Heroes is, you know what? They could play it totally different, right? Like, maybe Reuenthal actually does kill Mittermeyer. Maybe Mittermeyer wins somehow. But who could say, right? Like, this show has always done a good job of keeping us on our toes. So I never want to become too committed to a theory, because
Mecklinger's fleet still has a part to play, probably.
Yeah, we are told that they pass through Iserlohn.
That they're
about
going to meet with Julian is all we know.
Well, yes, it's hard to tell, like, if the next episode will, like, quote unquote jump back in time to show us that meeting, or if Mecklinger is just going to retroactively, or whatever, appear after having passed through Iserlohn.
And we're pretty much certain that the Earth Cult was behind what happened to Urvasi. So they may still have a role to play in this battle, in the minutia of this battle.
Yeah, I mean, as always, even when the number of players seems to be decreasing as the seasons go on,
there were so many players in the first place
that there are still interesting angles to be played here, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, somehow the show even found a way for the FPA or not the FPA, the Iserlohn Republic to play a part. I think that it speaks to a really good understanding of history on the show's part, that, like, even insignificant powers always have an
notable,
influence
yeah.
on events. Yes, in the same way that in the grand scheme of things of World War II, countries like Poland and Finland and Switzerland might have seemed insignificant in the greater schemes of World War II, but if you look at the individual events that conspire in those countries, the choices that are made by their leaders, and and happen on the soil of those countries, there is always a part to be played in history. Nobody, both for good and for ill, uh, nobody nobody is allowed to not play the game, and as a result, everybody's contribution can be felt in interesting ways. And
Indeed.
I think with that, we're going to call this one a podcast. So let's take care of the housekeeping. As always, you can listen to the podcast and read the rest of our posts on theglorioblog.com. We are currently kind of in the way of doing our first look posts for the new season. So if you watch more anime than just the legendary 1988 science fiction OVA, maybe check that out. I mean, D&T is airing right now, so
Yeah.
you could always check that out. See, watch Yang eat some French fries.
Oh yeah, the content that I crave.
Yes, I think I saw a screenshot of that food truck. And I think that, I forget exactly what it says, but I think in English, the 4 categories on that food truck are like food, snack, beer, drink,
yes,
which is very
like that. Yeah, I do remember that.
It's very good to me. But yeah, so you can also follow us on Twitter at theglorioblog.com. You can listen to our podcasts on Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, everywhere else that most other places that podcasts are aggregated.
Watch
you can listen to
Galactic Heroes on High Dive and
Yes.
DRV.
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Speaking of watching things, if listening to podcasts on YouTube is more your style, we also have it on YouTube. Oh yes, and our sister podcasts if you're interested in those, including the GLORIO Chat, where we talk about currently airing anime, and GLORIO's King of the Kaiju, where our GLORIO UK correspondents kind of talk shop about men in rubber suits. And I think with all of that, I think that's going to do it. So, as always, thank you all so much for listening. Iro, thank you for accompanying me on this journey.
Thank you.
And until next time, we will see you amongst the sea of stars.